David, thank you for that excellent talk on your perspectives from the Australian side of the COVID-19 pandemic, and
most welcome.
So many lessons for the rest of the world. There's two reasons really I'm doing this. One is this pandemic. It's important, but the other thing to my mind is that we have been really lucky in this pandemic. This could have been a virus which was as transmissible as measles, as deadly as Ebola or Middle East respiratory syndrome. We've been kind of lucky that the pandemic has been caused by a virus which, while it's a nasty virus, could have had a much higher fatality rate, been much more transmissible. And the amount of viruses out there in the wild has got like it's a 1 or a 2 or something with about 15 or 20 noughts on the end or something. I don't even know. Basically, it's an infinite amount of viruses out there. And the way that humans are interacting with animals, like this mink farm, for example, where in Denmark, because they're keeping these mink in small cages in not good conditions really, and they're all close together, the virus has mutated to adapt to the mink, but that mutation has made the virus that bit different, but not so different that it can't go back to humans. We've got another zoonotic spillover event, and
reverse zoonosis. I understand that the huge risk is a reverse zoonosis back into a bat population, either in South America or Central Africa are the two big other populations in the world who have their own unique coronaviruses, which would then chimera with coronavirus, and we get a whole new strain of coronavirus coming back. And
so by chimera, you mean that the two viruses could melt?
Yeah, I mean,
sort of like an inbreeding sort of thing.
You're the doctor, not me, but my understanding of RNA viruses is they shed like fragments of virus which can be absorbed into a new strain. So the worst possible situation is coronavirus getting into a bat population that has similar but different other coronaviruses, and you end up with a hybrid of the two, which RNA viruses evidently can do quite effectively, and which is probably what happened in the minks.
Yeah.
But assuming COVID is a bat virus, which we assume it to be, then the widespread in human population in Brazil must mean there's a very high probability that's already made its way back into other bat populations, and we may be, so that, I completely agree. There's an ongoing risk of, this virus coming back or other worse.
Or a completely different virus that no one's heard of, could cause a pandemic. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we should just say that not to be too down on bats. Bats are an essential part of the ecosystem. And it's us that need to adapt to live with bats in an ecologically friendly way, isn't it? That's as indeed with all other animals, I would say. So I wanted to move on to your work with AgUnity, David, if that's all right, please. Do you want to give us a bit of background about what AgUnity is and what you're doing at the moment?
Oh, sure. So, I mean, we take a low-cost smartphone like this one here, and we turn it into a relevant and useful tool for very low-income farmers of the world. So we're deploying this, this phone will probably end up in New Guinea or Ethiopia in the hands of a farmer.
How much does the phone cost, David?
These ones are about $50, but that's a waterproof one.
Wow.
The ones
so we're talking about what, $30 US dollars?
Oh, sorry, $50 US dollars.
$50 US dollars, right? Okay.
That's about a $20 US dollar phone as well. So there's varieties, but we started off with the cheapest phones we could find, and eventually we found that because it's a really valuable tool for the farmers, they much prefer to have a higher model that is waterproof and these other things. And to be honest, the cost of a $50 phone really, it's not significant. It's much more costly to actually go there and train the people and get it into their hands. You're much better to go with a good, suitable phone. And
so essentially $50 then, is it?
Yeah. Well, again, because we're buying them in bulk, we get them at a very good price. To the farmers in Ethiopia, they would consider that to be about a $200 phone. We've surveyed them extensively, and they always come back at about a $200 phone. So if they can get that and pay it off over a couple of seasons, they think it's an absolute bargain. We of course don't make money on the phone. They're usually subsidised by NGOs or commodity buyers or something that we partner with. But
so why is it so important for Ethiopian farmers to be able to chat to each other on mobile phones?
Yeah, I mean they don't. That's what they would normally do. Is chat with each other and do Facebook and things, which in that scenario, a phone's not really worth much. What we do is make it about them earning their income. So the fundamental thing we do is improve trust and cooperation. Yeah. So if I'm a farmer and I want to hand my cocoa beans or coffee into the buyer, I can record that transaction. I can tell them I've got something to pick up. And most importantly, I don't have to collect cash, particularly for women farmers. Being able, if I'm handing out in Papua New Guinea, one of the big problems is a woman farmer will take a bag of coffee into the town to sell it. Everybody knows she's coming back with a lot of cash.
Yeah.
The number of times people get robbed, or she ends up at home and the whole village turns up and wants some of the money. There's sort of a sharing system. So it makes very hard for that person. That lady might want to buy a solar lighting kit so her kids can study properly. She might want to buy more seedlings or some other land. It's very hard for them to save up. So one of the most important things we do is just enable them to keep the money in the cooperative or with the buyer, or order, say, a solar lighting kit, and when they've earned enough money, they get the solar lighting kit. And that takes it away from being a cash economy. And the other thing is
such simple tech. I mean, a solar lighting kit can basically give you 4, 5, 6 hours more productive time a day just with that one simple piece of technology.
Yeah, and if you see what they do now, we frequently see, children who are studying holding a kerosene lamp in front of the book because they've turned the kerosene lamp, down so low, and they're trying to study like this at night. And, in tropical places, they have to eat their breakfast and dinner in complete darkness. So, that lends to all sorts of health issues. So
literally,
very simple things can be transformative.
One battery, one solar panel, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, we get this kits already. So it's one solar panel and a light that plugs in it. That's like a torch, but that's enough to completely transform life. But if you're in a really remote village, when you've got the cash, there's no solar light kits available. Because the shop's not going to bring them in because they might sit on them for a year before they can sell one. So there's a whole logistical supply chain issues. And this is something as simple as a mobile phone, if it's designed to do those things, can solve. The problem with a normal mobile phone is, our farmers are never going to use Amazon or eBay. No. They have a credit card. So they can't use the functionality that those phones are normally designed for, so we have to make them work so they're appropriate for them. And that's all we do. It's quite simple, but very effective.
Yeah, but very profound, yeah. Working in some poor areas of the world, poor villages, slum areas, it's really disturbing to see how common burns are. And the solar lighting can reduce the risk of burns by 90-95%. Burns injuries are really, really common in poorer areas of the world. And lifelong effects of that. And if all you do is reduce the amount of burns, then that's absolutely worthwhile. But all the other things, so you're basically describing a microeconomic system, aren't you? It's a sort of local. This is almost like the original principles of building societies, isn't it? People cooperate together at a local level.
Yeah, I mean, we mostly work with either farmer cooperatives or we work with buyer groups that kind of act like cooperatives.
Yeah.
So now one of our biggest customers is Fairtrade International, which, I can't speak more highly of them as what they do as an organisation, but they typically work with farmer cooperatives. So they make sure that cooperative can sell effectively, and their challenge is just keeping the cooperative organised. Or they have two challenges really. One is that one's kind of sad really. In recent years, many companies, I should just take this back. The way fair trade works, if for anyone that doesn't understand it, is fair trade. If you're a coffee buyer and you want to say, I've got an ethical product, you pay a premium to fair trade. They go out to the village, they certify it, they make sure that, you know, everyone's being paid fairly, they make sure there's no children working, they check the standard of products, and then you pay some money to fair trade and you can put the fair trade logo on your bag of coffee.
Yeah.
And then fair trade takes half of that money they pay you and they let the village decide how to use it. So if the village wants to build a new school or a hospital or improve the road, they can use half of that money in the thing. And then also fair trade guarantees that all the farmers get like a living income on the coffee or cacao.
So basically you've got an external governance, an external auditor who is this fair trade organization, and they are basically scything through the endemic corruption that can be a problem in many of these areas by making this localized accountability system that's recognized externally.
And the whole principle is that when you and I buy fair trade coffee, and you know, if you buy fair trade sheets or coffee or chocolate, it's come from an ethical source. Now, they're not perfect. There's obviously some mistakes, but they're the closest I know to being perfect. And there's a good company, NKG, in Germany that's doing something very similar that we've had discussions with. Mars is also very good. They try to be highly ethical. The problem that fair trade has at the moment is, you know, we live in this world of half-truths now, and so many companies have just said, instead of paying the fair trade premium, we'll just stick a badge on our product that says it's ethically sourced, or we'll go to a company that will give us a badge, and they're not really doing anything behind the scenes. There's quite a few organizations like that say something is ethically sourced and can't prove it. And
like a mail order degree or something, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the important things we're doing with fair trade and a couple of other organizations is, because we can track from the farmer, we know the batch of coffee, we can put IoT devices in the bag, we can track the bag of coffee all the way around the world, and then in a few, later this year, we'll have QR codes on the bags of coffee in Europe. You can scan that and you can see exactly your batch of coffee, which farmer grew it, that fair trade built a school in that village, and that the farmer got paid fairly, and hopefully we'll turn that into a system where you can tip the farmer as well, and the farmer can say thank you.
Really?
I just think that's beautiful.
I think it's fantastic. It's communication between
with the farmer in New Guinea,
the primary producer in New Guinea, and the final consumer in Kensington in London or somewhere can communicate. And there's a provenance trail there. This is all genuine because you can actually trace it back using the QR code. That is, yeah.
So we're hoping with fair trade to shift the expectations of consumers a little bit in this behalf, that consumers actually see what's happening, they can feel the connection, and then when other people say that they're sustainable, consumers will actually expect to be able to see the proof. Fair trade's doing it, they just at the moment they can't prove it.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. But where did you get the idea for this, David? It's quite impressive. It's simple.
It was a total accident. We were working on banking technology. Well, it was my background as big banking, and we were working on advanced banking technology. We happened to go to a conference in London, and one of our founders turned up to the conference off a flight from China, went to get his pass, found out there was a hackathon on the weekend, and entered the hackathon. And then called me up and said, "Hey, there's this prize from Singularity University." Anyone that doesn't know Singularity,
what's a hackathon, David?
Oh, hackathon's like a sort of a part programming, part ideas competition. They often attach them to conferences and things.
Okay, yeah.
Get a small team to come up with an idea.
Yeah, right, okay.
And
like a think tank sort of thing, yeah.
And Singularity University is like a think tank in America. The people behind the X Prize, they do big stuff, and I've always had quite admiration for their big thinking. And so we tried to come up with the biggest world-changing idea we could to win the competition. And it just so happened that a lady from UNICEF and one of the division heads from Gates Foundation were there, and they loved the idea and they encouraged us. We're still yet to actually do a project with Gates Foundation. I've got great admiration for them, but we haven't worked with them yet. But they were the ones that really strongly encouraged us that this was a real idea. They said, look, we see this problem all over, and you've just nailed it, and we really want you to take it seriously. So that's what inspired us. And then we found that lots of NGOs and commodity buyers had been struggling with the problem that we had tried to solve. And coming from deep technology backgrounds, we were in a great position to eventually, and it took us 4 years to really get the solution to where it is, where it properly works. It's not an easy nut to crack, this one. You're dealing with a lot of, lack of communications, people that can't read, lots of, peculiar situations you don't have to build into a normal phone platform.
So you're working on icons and emojis and things that are intelligible to people with low literacy levels.
Correct. Big geometric shapes, primary colors, press the blue triangle when you're handing over your crop. So the user experience is very important. We had to go actually change the operating system on the phone to our own version of Android. I mean, one of my pet peeves is when you buy phones out of China or actually anywhere, they come up with so much junk on the phone, and they're doing a lot of things that are quite suspicious, to be honest. And if you're a farmer in New Guinea and you're paying a fortune just to have a limited data plan, you don't want the phone every time it starts up using all your data to doing random stuff. So we had to, clean up.
Data is precious in those situations, isn't it?
Yeah. So we had to clean up. So we've made it now so the phones essentially work in offline mode. So you can do all your transactions, and then in the middle of the night, if it picks up 1 bar of signal, it won't do anything else. It'll just send our transactions through. So they function very well.
Yeah.
And we can do other stuff. We can break we can lock, if the farmer loses, and we can lock out the phone remotely, so it has to come back to the. There's a few things that we had to do that wouldn't exist in a Western market, but are really specific to making this function in the environments that we have to make it working.
Yeah. So you're obviously describing pretty advanced sort of skill sets here. So you've gone from sort of big banking, so you've kind of downshifted this. I mean, that's obviously quite a big personal sacrifice for you and your family financially to do that. I mean, this is obviously something that you really believe in. It's a way forward for the world, really.
Oh, well, look, it's much less me than my whole team. I mean, we've got over 50 people in the company now, and a number of them, Keith, Stefan, they both come from investment banking with me. They were earning, well over $250,000 a year with large teams. And when they heard what we were doing, they, got out of banking and moved into a much better world. It's so much more fulfilling to be doing something. And, let's face it, at the end of the day, whether you've got the big house in New York or a place in Queensland, doesn't make a whole lot of difference. It's what your grandchildren remember you for. And, I certainly don't want to be remembered for saving Goldman Sachs a lot of money. I'd much preferred to be known for improving the lives of millions of farmers.
Yeah. And that's exactly what this can do. I just love the way it's sort of bypassing so many of the problems with an appropriate technology. It's an infusion of the most appropriate technology in the most appropriate circumstance, and that's what it's doing. So what you say it's a company, David? The company obviously makes enough money to pay you something.
No, we actually make quite. I mean, we've been growing rapidly, and we've been getting bigger and bigger projects. Like some are running into the tens of thousands of users, and the partner companies are usually very happy to pay us to deploy the solution, and then we pick up small transaction fees from the farmers, but only after they're earning more. So it's really, there's no loss to the farmers in that we give them the solution, we increase their income, and some of the increases have been really substantial. And then we get a small subscription fee to keep the system running so we can be viable. And then when they buy things like solar lights, we get a transaction fee on those. So the company is actually quite, this year has been particularly good. I mean, remarkably during COVID, because we've had many new markets open up to us. Many of our projects have gotten much larger. So it's been actually quite good commercially.
I think it's actually good though that the end users are once they make more money are paying back into this, because that they are personally invested in this. as well as the
and that's
dignity
also,
aspect of that.
Yeah, there's two important things. One, if you shouldn't. Again, we're working in philanthropy and impact, but we're not trying to be a charity.
Yes.
I personally feel that you should empower people and not help them.
It really is. The principle is empowerment, not aid, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Exactly. You give them the tools, and then you also let them choose what they want. Like, in Ethiopia, the farmers got the phones thanks to World Food Programme for the first year. And then after that, we said, well, do you want to keep the phones? If you do, you're going to have to pay for them. You're going to have to pay the subscription fee. 100% did. So show them that they can improve their life, and then let them choose if they want to get on, because then they appreciate it. Then, I'm paying for the phone. I need to make sure I'm earning money from this. And they will do that. I make sure I'm getting benefit from it. And then they'll also tell you what it needs to do, because it's not something they just got. A lot of charities and NGOs make the mistake of helping people rather than empowering, and that's a big challenge. And the other aspect on the other side of that is us as a company. If we want to help, our goal is to help millions, hundreds of millions of farmers. We want AgUnity to be a global platform for the very poor of the world. If we want to do that, we need to be commercially viable. We need to be able to get investment. We need to be able to scale like any technology company would be. And we can't do that if we're too philanthropic. We need to sort of balance that so we're helping people, but also doing it in a commercially viable way so we can do it in big scale.
The economy of scale,
why help 1,000 people if you can help 1 million? Why help 1 million if you can help 100 million?
Absolutely.
That's what we should be.
So ideally, this would just become the default way of doing things.
Well, that's certainly what we hope. I mean, we're expanding the platform now to put in educational service. I mean, we certainly want to put a lot of your videos on them, because I've shown your videos in really weird places.
It would be a privilege and an honor that you would use them. I would be delighted. Yeah, absolutely.
And education for the kids and just entertainment and things. So we're putting up towers in the village that they can connect to get these things that have to use their data plan. And we're looking to put a lot of material on that, and also give them social messaging and a few other like simple things that work in the way that their community needs them, rather than having them exposed to things like, Facebooks and other stuff that don't always have a positive influence on them.
And indeed, with an open internet, the bad guys can get in as well. There's many things can have a very destructive effect on communities. Just think of a few things. Advertising can be a downside. Pornography can be a problem in communities. I like the way you're working with World Food Programme as well. You just put through that in, but what that actually means to work with World Food Programme, it's a heck of a lot of groundwork and footwork to get those relationships started. All these things are actually really quite big.
Yeah, they took us many years. I think it took us a whole year from when World Programme said they wanted to do the project in Ethiopia to when we actually started it.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. What are the countries are you involved in, David, at the moment for this work?
So we've completed in 7 countries, and I think we've got 12 other countries on the go at the moment.
Do you remember 7? What from memory?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, which countries are you in at the moment?
Okay, we have Colombia, Guatemala, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Mali, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya.
That gives a good flavour of it. Yeah. I mean, these are all big agricultural producing countries, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
And they're all countries where people are dying from poverty-related diseases.
Often unnecessarily. I mean,
virtually
most of these countries can produce enough food. They just do it in the wrong places at the wrong times. A little bit of organisation, and they can often solve a lot of their food supply issues. And it's remarkably easier for farmers to increase their income as well. It's usually, sometimes they're growing the classic example. Almost all the coffee and cacao growers in the world could also grow vanilla. Vanilla grows, it's a vine. It grows really well up a coffee, along with coffee or
intercrop.
They just need a little bit of knowledge, and they can almost double their income.
Wow.
and these opportunities exist all over the place. Adding supplements to grounds, like, just being able to afford fertilizers or even better, algae supplements for soil to improve the soil grade, and they can improve yields substantially.
Algae is just part of the way ahead for humanity, isn't it? And it's a separate topic, but spirulina and marine algae, and it's just, marine algae has got the potential to feed the population of the planet a dozen times over. We just need to use it properly, and all the oils. So all these omega-3 oils that we talk about that come from fish, they don't come from fish at all. They come from the algae that the fish eat. So there's no reason why we shouldn't farm and eat the algae, and it's just
absolutely,
it's just so much simple stuff is just out there waiting to be done. I feel I should just put a bit of an appeal in at the moment, David, if you don't mind. Obviously, we're going to put all your links on for people that are interested. But what I started doing quite a few years ago is I tried to think, what do the first and second year medical students and nursing students all around the world need? And then try to put a video series together to teach that, along with textbooks and things. Then this COVID thing kind of got in the way a bit, but that'll go away again soon. So what I would really like is someone that knows a lot about farming marine algae to make simple instructional videos on that.
Oh, it'd be fantastic.
Someone that really knows a lot about intercropping between coffee and vanilla. Just to make a simple instructional video on that. And with YouTube now, you can actually do live translations with so many languages. It's just people that have the ability. The reason I can do this is I taught student nurses for 27 years. And, I was basically teaching pretty well the same stuff every year for those 27 years. So you learn a way to do it. And then when you video, you kind of can that. That's there. So what do we need? We need people to teach chemistry, physics, all these basic things, but all the practical things as well. So how to set up a solar lighting system cheaply, how to adapt a phone cheaply, and then someone with your logistical expertise would know exactly how to put that into the right hands at the right time to apply all this stuff, so that we have an egalitarian spread of this knowledge around the world. Sounds grandiose, but it's not. The technology.
No, it's totally achievable. I mean, you'd be most happy.
The technology didn't exist. Now it's there.
Yeah, you're most happy to hear that. Partly inspired by you, Dr. Campbell. We've actually have as we've grown, we've been able to put a little bit more resources aside for non-core, like non-revenue generating things. So we've got 2 people now, Simi and Petra, working on our educational program. And that's specifically philanthropic. Well, it's philanthropic in the way that it improves the quality of the platform, so it makes it more compelling. So it helps, like, farmers want the platform, but it's really not profit generating. So we're building a whole series of animated videos that help farmers just learn, where you should plant fields, what you should do about handing over crops. So it's very basic stuff at the moment. But once we get that on the platform, it's an open platform, so we can start sharing other content through that. And so hopefully we can encourage a lot more people to provide information to groups that normally they would never be able to reach. To the places we go, they often take a day's travel, and nobody goes there on holidays. So these are people that are really cut off from the most of society. And it's so easy now to just
easily give them a complete, like, practical course, and almost like a full apprenticeship on agriculture or on healthcare or on whatever it is. That can all be done now.
And how well would that advance the world? You literally have 3.1 billion people is roughly the number of low-income farmers below the poverty line.
What does 3.1 billion mean? I could write that number out, but that's it's an unimaginable number of people living in incredibly difficult circumstances.
40% of the world, and what's remarkable about that is their income can so easily be increased. Just these simple advices and things, without causing environmental damage, without having to encroach on things, because they're inefficiently using land at the moment. I mean, one of my big bugbears is palm oil, because I know a little bit about what funds it. If the farmers can be viable, you don't need to turn farming land into palm oil. You don't need to encroach on animal territories and cause more viruses. You know, farmers can live in a relatively harmonious situation with society. And when they start to earn more, they also don't have the demand to have more children, have bigger families to earn more. So that you actually see when farmers are relatively affluent, then the birth rate goes down to a manageable level, and they can look after their kids better and educate them more. So
the birth rate automatically adjusts itself, doesn't it? It's so clever.
Yeah. And this is the largest untapped resource in the world. I mean, if the world economy is going to keep growing, which to most, coming from banking, I probably have to say, it needs to keep growing, because we're geared around the expectation the world economy will grow. Yeah. It has to come from the bottom of society. You can't stretch the top anymore. There's only so many people. If you can increase the productivity of the bottom of society, there's more coffee, there's more cacao, there's more fruits and vegetables for everyone. So
while everyone ecology locally and globally as well. This is the point. There's such a win-win situation. And you might not have realized this, but by improving the way that people interact with animals, your work has probably prevented the pandemic of 2030.
What?
Who knows? What I'm saying is we need to improve the way we interact with ecology to prevent exactly. Let's get something good to come out of this COVID-19 pandemic. That we are not correctly interacting with the ecosystem now. We are not correctly interacting with animals, and that has caused a pandemic. Well, to be quite honest, it serves us right. You could look at it that way. I mean, innocent people suffer tragically, but this is basically an ecological problem, and that's exactly what you're.
And I think it's not surprising if you've travelled around China a bit to notice that the viruses are coming from China, where that encroaching on environments is extending, in an unfettered way. Whereas, countries like Indonesia probably have as many viruses, but they're a little bit more capable of coexisting in the society. So you can see that, you're not getting the outbreaks in Indonesia. I mean, you do get them in Africa with Ebola, but I think that's a special case, that Ebola is a particularly... it's a special sort of disease.
A lot of that was related to death rituals and body fluids and contact with dead bodies. It's the interaction with cultural issues as well that comes into that.
Yeah. But you don't see you don't see as many zoonotic spillovers apart from the Ebola one happening in Africa, given the population, the extent that they have, as you do they're mostly happening out of China. So I think that encroachment on animal environments, which is happening there at a pace that outweighs anywhere else, that is indicative of something that we should stop as a species doing as much. Try to live a little bit more cooperative with the environment, and do so in a way that benefits the people in that situation.
And that is one of the core values of AgUnity, that's what you're doing, that's what you're promoting.
That's our whole purpose, to allow people. I mean, it troubles me that with robotics in factories and everything, but there was this period 20 years ago where people moved out of the country and moved into cities for better jobs.
Urbanization.
Those jobs in Jakarta and Bangkok, they're not there anymore. They're not expanding. So those people can't move from the country into those environments, and if the country gets depleted, they've got nowhere to go. It ends up a society into a very, we end up in a Mad Max type scenario. It's not good. Yeah. What we want is sustainable living in the country where people actually have a good life if you solve the very basic challenges for them, and it's what we hope to achieve in our little small way.
Yeah. No, and the restriction of food miles and things. If I just give you a silly example, I've got an allotment. Does that translate in Australia? You have these little patches of land where you grow things. Yeah, I'm not sure it does in the States, but anyway, there's my allotment, which is worked remarkably inefficiently. I sort of take ages to get round to things, and I'll end up producing a few kilograms of food a year, I suppose. But I've got a neighbour on the allotments whose allotment he's got 2 allotments on the patch. They're immaculately managed. He produces huge amounts of food. He takes food round to all the neighbours. He takes food to the local hospice. He just has 2 really small patches of land, but he produces tens of kilos of food a year on it and shares it out with people.
Yeah.
There is so much potential to improve the productivity of land around. And the other one is expanding hydroponic cultivation to desert areas.
Oh, yeah.
I know this is quite coming. It's expanding quite a lot in Western Australia now, where there's a lot of Western areas, but with low rainfall, and things like hydroponics reduce the water requirement by 90%. That means you can increase food production by 90% for a given amount of rainfall. I mean, this is huge. It's
the water loss is doubly important. We understand this very well. I grew up in the Murray-Darling Basin area of Australia, and the water loss is not only about the waste using more water, but if you're overusing water, you're also running off fertilizers and sediments, and you're causing salination of the water table. So it basically destroys the land over time if you're overwatering. So if you can water at exactly the right level, that's the key to sustainable agriculture.
Yeah, we want to prevent the desertification, if that's the right word, and to there's no reason why we shouldn't regress desertification, because if we're producing crops, then we're producing compost, for the waste, and we can plow that back into the soil. And again,
absolutely.
We're living in harmony with the ecosystem rather than living against the ecosystem.
They're doing that in the Middle East brilliantly at the moment. I mean, one of the things that I often complain about in Australia is Australia should be leading the way, because we've got the most desert land and the things, and Middle East is absolutely ahead of everyone in the regard of turning desert back into fertile soil. So it's totally possible. They do it because they have to. Other countries should be doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. The possible future generations of humans on this planet are thousands and thousands of generations, and at the moment we're condemning them to a non-existence.
Absolutely, we need to be spending more effort now, and I think it has positive returns. I think we're just short-sighted in the terms. I think if you put effort back into the soil, if you put effort back into making farmers sustainable on a small scale, that has benefits over generations that just need to be quantified and capitalized, and it totally makes sense to do that. We're just thinking too short term. We're selling off resources now rather than valuing the long term value of that asset and protecting that asset for the long term. You don't start selling the plumbing out of your house when you need extra money, right?
Absolutely.
It's going to cost you more to put it back. But that's what we're doing with the earth in a very bad way.
Yeah. The other thing is things like fruit production. Just a few fruit trees, and you get so many apples for years and years. And why isn't this done much more than it is? The Amazon is an interesting example. The Amazon is being trashed now. Obviously, it's appalling what's going on there. But part of the reason the Amazon is so fertile as it is, a lot of it is a natural ecosystem. But people that live there for the last, who knows, 10,000 years, maybe as many as 15,000 years, they produced unimaginable amounts of compost over those millennia. And there's whole areas there now that are fertile because people for thousands and thousands of years put back into the soil, put back into the ecosystem. And at the moment, because we have the oil-driven technology, we're just ploughing through all that now. And
there's certainly a better way, and hopefully we're in the generation that will wake up and start to change it. That's certainly my hope.
Yeah. Well, we're going to put lots of AgUnity links and everything. Anyone wants more information on this?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Everywhere we can. And obviously, any of my educational videos, I'd be more than delighted if you would, if you use them.
We're preparing the towers now, so I'm grateful. Looking forward to putting your videos on there.
No, that would be fantastic. And obviously, we appeal to other practical. I mean, academic teachers are good. Practical teachers are good. Both have a place. You know, if that's your area of expertise, think about making videos of this type that are accessible, have a particular end purpose. Well, you're an educationalist. If you're listening to this now, you know how to do that. So,
and we'd love to share them. So,
yeah, do that. Well, one last thing, Dave. This poster you kindly sent me. Where did this idea come from?
Oh, we were using them at events. That's where we got the posters originally, and we just found that they're really good for sharing information widely. So we started making them in developing countries, and putting them up all over the place. So
such simple infographics, isn't it?
Oh yeah. And
I mean, without the language, even you can still see what that is.
Yeah, we do a lot of them. We've got no words on them. They're just. I think you've seen a couple in my pictures. Showing what exponential growth means and why it's important. And it was amazing that you put those posters up and you actually see more people wearing masks. Because they got it. Yeah. And that's one of the great things about people in developing nations. They'll take an idea. They know how serious diseases are, and if you tell them masks are good, they'll wear a mask. They won't say, "Oh, it's my right not to wear a mask." It's like,
so you've supplied this poster to help combat the ignorance in the United Kingdom. Where else have you supplied them to?
Papua New Guinea, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Uganda. I think that's about it. Yeah.
No, I love the simple infographics. Have you got one on vitamin D?
No, we haven't done that yet. I really should. I feel remiss about not putting vitamin D on the one we sent you, because it is such
No, you can only have so much message on a particular poster, but
yeah, exactly. So I think the next one we got to do is a vitamin D one. Yeah. The trick is to how to explain that correctly in a developing market. So maybe it's eat fish, eat these vegetables. So it might require a little bit more. Research from us.
A new friend of mine, Liz has got some vitamin D infographics, which I'll send you, and she does want them to be shared. So that might give some idea on vitamin D infographics.
Fantastic, we'd love to do it.
Yeah. But the other thing that's interesting is you've got maybe 10 a dozen different posters, and yet that say about 10 or a dozen posters like this conveys the essential information that you need to curtail and to reverse a pandemic. It's selection of information which is so simple, but if you don't know, you don't know. It's like when you struggling for ages with a computer problem and someone says, "Oh, you just do that," and they do one click and it all just bursts back into life again. But if you don't know that one click, you can't do it. And that's exactly what this is giving. Just giving that simple information.
A lot of them. It just reminds me. A lot of the posters we put out are just how to make a mask out of an old T-shirt and stuff. And that one's surprisingly powerful because people want a mask. They're not sure where they can get one. They're not sure if it'll work, so they don't do it. As soon as you say an old T-shirt, you just cut the sleeve off a T-shirt. There's a mask. And that was one of the really interesting discussions that was going on in the COVID forum in Australia. That we shouldn't wear. Initially, people saying we shouldn't wear masks because the healthcare workers need them. It's like and people in Australia were complaining about that, and I'm looking at people in Indonesia making them out of a sleeve of a T-shirt and going, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be taking up a healthcare worker. Surely you've got an old T-shirt.
Yeah.
And they're actually more comfortable, those ones.
Yeah. So it's a nice, pretty one like that, as opposed to a clinical one like that. And
exactly.
It does the same job. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I've got one once home here.
Yeah. Hopefully everyone's noticed we've got our master hand, David. So
we do. It's right here on my desk. It's been on my desk and it seems to have been stolen from.
Yeah.
It's around here somewhere.
Yeah. And I must say I was very flattered that you put a picture of me on the bottom of the poster.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully not too realistic representation of me, but
that That was our best cartoon representation.
No, it just gets the message across. It's just so simple, you know. It's love it. Simple communication is what education is all about. It's great. David, thank you very much for your time. I know it's getting late there now, isn't it? We're separated by 10 hours on our different parts of the planet. So
exactly, it's just gone 10 o'clock here. So thank you very much for having me on the program once again, Dr. Campbell.
No, thank you to you, and thank you for your family for giving us this time with you. And lots of links at the bottom. Follow this up. Get involved with AgUnity. I'm convinced this is the way ahead. It's not only is it the right thing to do, as David said, it's the right thing for individuals. You know, people talk a load of rubbish about social justice and stuff like this when there's these glaring injustices in the world. And you know, you're attempting to address these at a fundamental level, and that's got knock-on effects for the environment and knock-on effects for the future of humanity. I mean, what is not to love about this? It's just you know,
that's why I enjoy it so much. Yeah.
The whole philosophy is exactly where we should be going. And so can you send me a load of links, David, and I'll just put them onto the bottom of the.
I will do.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
I'll get you to stick up links.
Great. Thanks, David. Excellent. Appreciate it as always. Great to talk to you.
Cool. I'll speak to you again sometime soon.
We hope so.
Thanks then. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.